was a very dramatic day for Greece yesterday, and the drama played out in central Athens, just outside the Parliament building. I was inside the Parliament following the debate and the crucial vote inside the Parliament. But outside, the scenes were absolutely dramatic. Several businesses and really old neoclassical buildings, very beautiful buildings, landmarks of Athens, were burnt. There was looting and general anarchy, really, in the streets of Athens. We are used to seeing pictures like that in Athens when there's large protests, but those were particularly vicious last night.
Yeah, we're looking at some of those pictures right now, as people can see people throwing things at these buildings, burning. It looks like motorcycles are in the street. So basically, is this new round of belt tightening just seen as a stopgap measure, buying time, or is there any real fix here?
Neither the former nor the latter, really. I mean, this is well beyond belt tightening. This legislation that was passed in the Greek parliament in the wee hours of this morning is brings deep structural reforms and a real overhaul in how the Greek economy is run, at least in theory, because implementation is a totally different matter. It also brings harsh austerity, more austerity in a country that is now in its fifth consecutive year of recession. Again, whether it will be implemented or not depends to be seen. Greece has been criticized for not implementing previous reforms and austerity measures. But the real problem, as you're hearing here in Athens and the rest of the country, is growth, extremely high unemployment, and a lack of economic vision for the future. It doesn't seem that this new piece of legislation is doing anything to fix that in the short run.
Martina, what happens now as far as the EU and the IMF, and the ECB, the so-called troika? They wanted a parliamentary vote. They got that, albeit in very difficult conditions, as you just described. But what happens now with things like the bond exchange and the whole, the debt situation of Greece?
Right. Well, I'm glad you asked that, because it gives me the chance to promote our latest blog post on Real-Time Brussels at WSJ.com, which explains what happens, especially this week. Basically, on Wednesday, the Eurozone finance ministers are due to meet again in Brussels, and they'll be expecting their Greek colleague, Mr. Evangelos Venizelos, to tell them what he's done, what Greece has done. He will be explaining the new legislation. He'll be saying, guys, we've done our bit. Now, can we please have our second bailout, which is up to, or actually could be even higher than 130 billion. The formal bond exchange offer is expected by the end of the week. Friday the 17th is the latest deadline. Either on Friday or on Thursday, we're also expecting some technical bits of legislation in the Greek parliament that will set out, for example, the highly controversial collective action clauses, hoping to bind in creditors who are not prepared to voluntarily be on board with the debt exchange offer that is being prepared by Greece. And then going into the next week, theoretically, again, we should have this public offer. We should have the Eurozone finance minister signing off on the Greek bailout, and then we get into the technical implementation of that bond swap.
So if I heard you correctly, and obviously a lot of moving parts here, basically by the end of this week, if everything goes well, we'll know what the bond exchange terms are. Greece will have its second bailout, and at least for the time being, that crisis will have been averted.
I'm afraid that is a bit too optimistic. By the end of this week, we should indeed have the details of the bond exchange offer. That is the plan. Mind you, this is a plan imposed to Greece externally because, a reminder to viewers, there is a looming 14.5 billion euro debt redemption on March 20th that needs to be avoided. So everything has to happen before that. It takes up to 3 weeks to complete the bond exchange, which brings us to this Friday. Now, whether Greece will get the whole bailout or not depends on Greece complying with these new rules and these new measures that have been set out in the legislation. And there's only one thing to be sure, and that is that the Eurozone countries and the IMF who are funding these programs will not be too keen to give Greece the little tranches of that money unless Greece is really doing what it's been asked to do.